What's the biggest mistake you remember making? What's the worst thing you remember doing, even if you had good intentions? And how did you feel after it happened? Well, that's how Joseph Smith felt when Section 3 of the Doctrine and Covenants was given to him. Section 3 through 5 cover an episode in church history that we'll call the Lost Manuscript. This happened when Joseph Smith lost the first manuscript of the Book of Mormon, commonly known as the 116 pages. Now, to understand this, we need to understand the timeline a little bit of how the Book of Mormon was translated. In September of 1827, Joseph Smith received the plates from the angel Moroni and is able to take them home. Because persecution is so intense in the area where Joseph Smith grew up, Joseph instead decides to move to Harmony, Pennsylvania, near where his wife, Emma Smith, grew up. And there he begins the translation process. During this time, Emma acted as his scribe, and so did a man from Palmyra named Martin Harris. From about January up to about June of 1828, Joseph Smith translated a record which he'll later call the Book of Lehi. When the Book of Lehi was translated, Martin Harris wanted to take the manuscript back to Palmyra in order to show his wife that he wasn't wasting his time and that he was doing what he was supposed to do. There were earlier signs that Martin was careful or skeptical about what Joseph Smith was doing. For instance, he took a manuscript with certain characters transcribed on it and visited 3 different scholars trying to find out if they could translate it and if they thought the characters were authentic. One of the men, Charles Anthon, asked if he could see the record and translate it, to which Martin replied the record was given to them by an angel. At that point, Charles Anthon ripped up a certificate that he had given to Martin Harris and told him there was no such thing as angels. Martin goes back to Joseph Smith at this point, convinced that he's the only person that can translate the Book of Mormon, and that the Book of Mormon has to be translated by the gift and power of God and not by academic means. By June of 1828, they had produced a large manuscript which Martin wanted to take home to show to his wife, to prove to her that he wasn't wasting his time down in Harmony with Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith was wary about this. In fact, in one of his histories, he records that after we had translated 116 pages, he desired to carry them to read to his friends, that peradventure he might convince them of the truth. He continues, 3 times therefore I inquired of the Lord, and he said unto me that he must not take them, and I spoke unto him. Martin, and the word of the Lord said, inquire again. I inquired again, and the 3rd time the Lord said unto me, let him go with them, only he shall covenant with me that he will show them to only but 4 persons. And he covenanted with the Lord that he would do according to the word of the Lord. Therefore he took them and took his journey unto Palmyra, Wayne County, in the state of New York. Joseph then just records he broke the covenant which he made before the Lord, and the Lord suffered the writings to fall into the hands of wicked men. Now, why didn't Joseph go immediately when he didn't hear from Martin and find out what happened to the manuscript? Well, part of the answer can be found where Joseph Smith and Emma lived. Right next door to where their cabin was is a small cemetery, and in that cemetery can be found this headstone on the which reads, in memory of an infant son of Joseph and Emma Smith, June 15, 1829. One of the reasons why Joseph allowed the manuscript to go into Martin's hands was because they were going to take a break, because Emma Smith was about to give birth to their first child. Unfortunately, this little boy, who was named Alvin after Joseph's deceased brother, only lived a few hours and then passed away. And not only did the baby die, but Emma Smith also almost dies. And Joseph Smith has to stay by her side, nursing her back to health. Finally, after 2 weeks, it was Emma that convinced Joseph Smith that he needed to travel to Palmyra and find out what had happened to the manuscript. When Joseph Smith arrives, he sends one of his brothers to find Martin Harris, and Martin Harris tells them that they'll come to the Smith home the next day. The next day, Martin comes, but he hesitates to enter into the house. And then finally, when he does come in, he breaks down into tears and tells them that the manuscript is gone and that he doesn't know what has happened to it. Joseph Smith seeks and tries to find the manuscript, but it's gone. And when he goes back home and arrives back in Harmony, Pennsylvania, he has a revelation given to him. He later wrote, immediately after my return home to Harmony, I was walking out a little distance, when behold, a former heavenly messenger appeared and handed to me the Urim and Thummim, for they had been taken from me in consequence of my having wearied the Lord in asking the privilege of letting Martin Harris take the writings, which he lost by transgression. I inquired of the Lord through them and obtained the following revelation. This revelation told Joseph Smith that he had feared man more than God, and that he had made a mistake and would be chastened and could be removed from his place if he didn't repent. But it also informed Joseph Smith that the Lord had prepared a way for him to receive the material that he had lost, that Joseph was instructed not to translate the lost manuscript again, but to translate a new record, the small plates of Nephi. Now, during this time period after Joseph Smith had lost the record, he was understandably devastated, and it appears that he was hesitant to start translating again because he felt so bad over the mistake that he'd made. During this time, Joseph's father and his brother Samuel came to visit him in Harmony, Pennsylvania. Joseph's father sought a blessing from Joseph Smith, and the blessing becomes section 4 of the Doctrine and Covenants. Now, most of us are familiar with section 4, and it was given to Joseph Smith's father, intended to encourage him, but the effect it seems to have had was to encourage Joseph to pick up the pen and start translating again. Because it's shortly after this revelation is given that Joseph Smith starts to make attempts to translate the manuscript again. Shortly thereafter, Martin Harris comes down to Harmony and visits Joseph Smith again because his wife had started to make threats that she was going to launch a lawsuit against him and Joseph Smith. In response to this, Joseph Smith receives the revelation now known as Section 5 of the Doctrine and Covenants, which was intended to chasten Martin Harris for what he had done, but also encourage him to support the translation process and help them continue. So when you've made a big mistake, who do you seek solace and help from? Hopefully your friends come and talk to you. Hopefully your loved ones come over and put their arm around you and say that you're doing okay. And through their encouragement to you, sometimes you gain the strength and the fortitude to pick the pieces up and continue moving on. Joseph Smith not only picked up the pieces, in a few weeks he met Oliver Cowdery, who would become the scribe for most of the rest of the translation of the Book of Mormon. Joseph's family encouraged him to start translating again, and then the revelation in section 5 that he gives to Martin encourages everybody to pick up the pieces and move on, and eventually they complete the work and give us the scriptural record that we have today, known as the Book of Mormon. When we make mistakes, we do have to sometimes commiserate and feel bad and suffer because of what we've done wrong. But the Lord always wants us to keep moving forward, to pick up the pieces, to continue on with the mission that he's given to us, and to accomplish the things that he has in mind for us to accomplish. Just like Joseph Smith, every single one of us can come to the Lord after we've made a mistake and receive his direction, counsel, and guidance. And once we've repented, step back onto the path and continue on the journey that he's given to us.